Hello! It is April 2025, Autism Acceptance Month. It's about halfway through the month, so this is just your gentle reminder that you have about 2 weeks to be accepted by an autistic or else you're going to be yeeted into the sun. I know that sounds kind of harsh, but hey, I don't make the rules. If you have a problem with it, you're going to have to take it up with Vampire Michael Sheen. Hey, we're promoting safety and empowerment over here! My apologies to all New Yorkers and fans of Midnight Cowboy. Hello and welcome to the Trauma-Informed SLP. I'm Kim Neely, and on this channel, I use my knowledge of trauma-informed care and communication and speech-language pathology, and also my neurodivergent queerness to do a lot of stuff, basically. What a great tagline. Good job, Kim. You totally nailed that. And today, I want to welcome all late diagnosed neurodivergents. Welcome! Yay! Round of applause. That's a really bad joke. I will excuse myself. Bye. Welcome, late diagnosed neurodivergents. Hello, how are you? This is a video for you, and it's actually going to be a bit of a video series for you because my thought is to do a little bit of like what I have found useful because I am also late diagnosed. I am multiply neurodivergent, and there are certain things I know from my speech pathology training prior to the diagnosis that has helped me, and also just trauma-informed stuff and like some of the stuff I've been learning about that. Some of that stuff has sort of helped me unpack some things. So I thought, let's stick it in some videos for educational purposes and do kind of like a little series here because there's a lot of late diagnosed autistics out there and advocates and ADHDers and a lot of YouTube channels, of course, that are far bigger than mine are doing this, but also a lot of their unpacking type videos is just kind of like scattered throughout, and it takes a lot to parse through it. And it can be really great because they might explain things in ways that I don't, and it might be an easier explanation for you. But I thought, let's just stick it all together. Let's just stick it in there.
Phrasing.
But I thought, yeah, let's just put it all here because I have a little Venn diagram, which I'll show you with my editing magic, of how I think of neurodivergent affirming care, especially when it comes to communication. And a lot of this stuff is stuff I've discovered on my own, and I've also found a lot of research to back up a lot of these things. And I think for adults that are late diagnosed, this information is still really useful, and it might be useful to think of it in this way, in this little Venn diagram way. But I just will, basically for educational purposes, I'm going to talk about the terms that you see on this diagram and like what they mean. So this is really more of like a vocabulary learning kind of situation with examples from my own life and stuff. So this is not intended to diagnose anyone with anything. Absolutely not. So full on disclaimer, I can't diagnose anybody online because you have to have an individualized assessment in order to diagnose anything and to assess and to like come up with a treatment plan or anything like that. It has to be individualized. But maybe this will also help with like explaining to like neurotypical friends and family, like, what's up? What's up with your neurodivergency, you know? As I am gearing this toward late diagnosed adults, I will let you know what I tend to say in terms of groups. I don't tend to use, when I'm talking to groups of people, which on this video by nature, I'm assuming I'm talking to a group of people, multiple people out there. So I got to talk in more generalized terms, right? Because we're not individualizing this. So for that reason, I am going to be grouping neurodivergence likely into two groups because I group by societal adversity rather than by like support needs or functioning labels. You might also hear people when they talk about autistics, they might talk about levels. That's from the DSM-5, level 1, level 2, level 3 autism. And it's really more about the kind of support needs you need. That's the idea behind those levels. So it's essentially high, medium, or low support needs. And that stuff's really informative if you're an individual and you're figuring out how to accommodate things and what kind of resources you need, what kind of treatments you might need, et cetera, et cetera. That's really useful. But it's not so useful when we're talking about groups of people, in my opinion. So I tend to group neurodivergence kind of with disabilities, basically. It's a disability type group. So you either have a parent neurodivergence. Those are people who have some kind of comorbid disability that makes it really obvious. This would be like a visible disability, basically. But I like to say a parent because Some neurodivergents, you know they're different because of how they sound, or maybe because they're not speaking. For example, maybe you don't hear sound and that's why they're more apparent. So apparent is anything that makes it kind of overt and obvious that you are different. So if people just see you standing around in the grocery store, they would clock you as different. And there's a different type of societal stigma that comes along with that. But that is a group that gets talked about a lot. And typically those are the neurodivergents that are spoken of as high support needs because they have more medical needs under the medical model. They might need access to like things to help them move around, ambulation, as we would say in the medical field. They might need access to devices to help them communicate and things like that. But if you're late diagnosed, I'm going to go ahead and make the assumption that you are a non-apparent neurodivergent. What that means is, like me, regardless of how successful you are with your masking, you likely are given the option to mask. So when people first see you, when they see you standing around the grocery store, they don't clock you as being different. They would just kind of presume you're one of the neurotypicals out there, right? So that's what this is for. That's what this series is going to be for. It's for the non-apparent neurodivergents out there. So today's video, first video to welcome to your late diagnosis. Hi. Video 1. What we're going to talk about here is where I think is a really great place to start, or what I think is what I have found has been really helpful when it comes to starting to learn a little bit about yourself and how you function in the world, and particularly like what kind of accommodations you might need because of how you function in the world. And that is kind of thinking of your own sensory profile. So what do I mean by figuring out your sensory profile? So sensory profiles, you can definitely have formalized, official, like research, normative testing type sensory profiles for sure, especially occupational therapists do this a lot with kids. They tend to be the ones who do like the big sensory profile type stuff. But I think for a late diagnosed adult, you likely have some sense of things that bug you or things that are really hard for you. That's probably one of the reasons why you started thinking, maybe I get a diagnosis. Maybe you had a kid who got a diagnosis and you're like, oh, I do all those things too. I've had all those experiences too. That happens a lot. So sensory profile is a great place to start, I think, in terms of reframing the things that are challenging for you and why they're challenging for you. So sensory profile will also get into executive skills. So like executive function, those are the skills that your brain uses to just go throughout your day. It's like all the different ways our brain works to help us do things. But we're going to start with sensory profile first. So what this means is sensory stuff. This is a little nervous system review for everyone, okay? So your peripheral nervous system has a sensory section. It has other things too, but we're going to think of it as like sensory information or motor output. Motor being like your muscles, your behavior, things like that, right? My hand gestures, this is all motor. I'm moving my hand around. Woo. Motor. Okay, because I talk with my hands a lot. And so I don't know if I'm going to turn this into a full podcast episode or not. And if it is, forgive me that I'm making a lot of visual references for people who are just listening. Anyway, I talk with my hands a lot. I'm moving around my hands a lot. So that's motor output. Walking is motor, picking up a fork, writing, typing, these sort of things require muscle. It requires motor output from your brain. Sensory information is basically all the stuff that comes into our brain about what's going on inside of our body and also our environment around us, okay? So when you think of like the 5 or 6 senses, depending on when you went to school, you have sight, smell, touch, taste, and a sense of where your body is in space and a sense of kind of what your limbs are doing, right? If I am moving my hand around, I can close my eyes but still know that I'm moving my hand around because I get a sense of what that hand is doing. There's a sensory component to my brain being able to know that that's happening even if I'm not looking at it, right? Although visual is also a sense, so you know what I mean. That wasn't the best example. That wouldn't have done me very well on my systems neuroscience midterm exam. Okay, but anyway, you have all this sensory information. It goes up into your brain processes it and does stuff with it. And your body is always taking in way more information than you realize, right? Your brain actually filters out a fair amount of stuff in your environment naturally before it gets to your conscious brain. Your like prefrontal cortex here, this area, this front area of your brain. This is where information has to go to for you to know that it is happening, basically. So a lot of people's brains tune out things like the hum of an air conditioner. They don't really notice it all the time. That's not always true for neurodivergents, but for a lot of neurotypicals, they could sit in a room with an air conditioner, and as long as it's not making some weird, clunky, clacky, weird sound, the gentle hum, the sound, they'll just sort of tune it out, right? They won't become consciously aware of it after a while. Another good example is actually, I had to learn this one kind of the tough way. First time in my life I broke a bone, and knock on stuff that it would be the last time, hopefully, that I'm hoping. But I broke my ankle like during COVID shutdown. Excellent timing. Because that's how I go. I have really good timing on things. So I broke my ankle back during COVID shutdown in like 2020. And I remember I had to be off my foot for like 3 months, and then I had to go in and get an x-ray done, and they needed me to stand on my foot to like see, I guess, how it held weight. And that was my first time stepping on my foot in 3 months. And oh my gosh, you guys, it hurts when you step on your bottom of your foot if you haven't been stepping on it forever. It felt like walking on like needles. It was so like lots of sharp pain. And I remember learning this from neuroscience, from some of my neuroscience classes, that's one of the things your brain naturally filters out, is the fact that like the weight of your body on your feet is painful. You still have pain receptors on the bottom of your foot. Obviously, like if you step on a Lego, we all know that's right up there with childbirth in terms of pain. That is sarcasm for you. But that is definitely an indication, right, that you have pain receptors on the bottom of your feet. And those pain receptors do still get affected by just the sheer amount of your body weight on your feet. That is actually painful, but your brain tunes it all out because you do it all the time. But because I hadn't been on my foot for 3 months, my brain stopped filtering it. And then it just really hurt for a bit. And then, it took like a few minutes or so. I don't know how long it took. It took a while for it to like go back to ignoring it, but the initial standing on it was so painful, you guys. Oh my gosh, because the sensory information is still hitting my brain. I'm just not usually consciously aware of it. Okay. So for a lot of even neurodivergence, our brain is still ignoring some things just to have us be functional in the world. We just might not be filtering out all the things, right? Especially if you have kind of a high sensory like you have a lot of sensory needs, right? Like you're very sensitive to many things. So that's what we're kind of talking about in terms of building your sensory profile, is how your sensation and particularly your perception. So perception is where, perception in like really true neuroscience terms, perception happens from the moment stuff hits like essentially your spinal cord up into your spinal column, because like the sensory information is getting changed by going into new neurons. But for the sake of simplicity, we're going to talk about perception being like conscious, like what you recognize as the sensory information in your environment. That's after it gets filtered, after all of that stuff that's hitting your conscious brain. That is how you're perceiving the world. And neurodivergents very often have a different way of perceiving the world compared to neurotypicals. And so thinking of a sensory profile is one place to start when it comes to how you perceive the world a little differently, possibly than either neurotypical friends and family or even other neurodivergents, because this is one of the things that makes us all very different from each other. Similar in the sense that we experience the world differently from neurotypicals, but different in the sense that like one might be sensitive to one thing that another person doesn't care about, and vice versa, right? So what I want to do is kind of walk you through how to kind of make your own informal, personal, like keeping track, building some self-awareness for what your sensory needs are through the sensory profile. One of the tricks of building a sensory profile as a late diagnosed adult is that if you're anything like me, you have likely been pushing through and ignoring a lot of sensory needs for a very long time, or you've started to avoid things or isolate because of those needs, but you don't really know that that's what you're doing. You're not like consciously aware of why you're avoiding certain areas, certain environments. You just know you don't want to go there. You just know that's tiring or that's too much. I don't like being there. But you kind of can't put your finger on why, right? So I think one of the most useful things in terms of starting to think of your sensory profile is think of something like that. Think of something that exhausts you. At least for me, that's like, think of something extreme like that, where it either really exhausts you or really excites you, or it's something that's really fun. If you want to go more that way, you can think that, or something that's really relaxing, like super relaxing. Like if you have zero energy left, this is something you'll do because it's super relaxing. Think of those sort of things. Okay. And then you're going to think about it in terms of your likes and your dislikes when it comes to the sensations, when it comes to like your senses, your 5 or 6 or however many you want to count them, senses, okay? Because we have more than the 5. But when I was growing up, we learned 5. But I think we now learn 6 officially, because I think the fancy word proprioception, essentially the feeling of where your body is and what your body's up to, is, I think, become technically a 6th one for school kids, I believe. But we do have others too, because we also have your internal body too. That is also important information for your brain to get. Anyway, so for example, before my diagnosis, here's something I knew I hated doing. I hated going out to really noisy environments, like really loud bars or really loud restaurants. I would hate it. I also hated going to box stores. And back in my musician days, prior to being a speech language pathologist, I got degrees in voice performance, and I taught as a voice teacher and did some very minor opera stuff that was like local. It's not that, people were like, ooh, it's like, it truly was not that impressive. I did not get that far. So yeah, you can hold back the ooze, but nonetheless, I didn't have a lot of money. Okay. Because musician, in the United States, not a lot of money. So I did go to box stores for the discounts, the Target, the Walmarts, the Costco's, the whatever. Although Costco, because of the membership, I had to I usually try to find a friend who had one who I could just like go in with, because that was money out of my pocket to buy the membership. Anyway, but I hated going to them. I hated it. I would go, I would suck it up, I would push through because I needed the discounts. But boy, I hated going, and it would always wear me out. And then, you'd have those friends who would be like, oh, if I go to Target, I'm there for hours. Oh my gosh. And I buy everything. And oh my gosh, right? You hear about that from people. And I never understood how, because when I went, it was like, I want to go get the thing I want to get, and I want to get out as fast as possible. That's the way I've always shopped in general, including at malls growing up. Back in the 80s, we went to the mall a lot for like when it was going back to school. We got to get new clothes because, you grow out of your clothes or whatever. So we would do those little like clothing, like my mom would take my sister and I out to the mall and do a little clothes shopping thing. And I hated it. There were aspects in the mall I liked. Like I liked getting like an Orange Julius, like the OG Orange Julius from the 80s, I liked that. I liked getting maybe an ice cream. I liked kind of like some of the food, right? But like the experience of being in a mall and trying on clothes, I hated it. I hated it so much. And I still don't like it. I'll shop online way more than I would ever go into a store. I don't want to go into a store and shop most of the time. I really avoid them a lot. And I didn't know why I disliked it. I just knew I didn't, right? So that's all I would say is I just dislike it. I did like the store Spencer's in a mall because a lot of stimming happening in Spencer's. It's a pretty nice place to just zone out and chill, especially in the back wall of Spencer's back in the day. But on the whole, I hated it. My eyes would get itchy. They would get bloodshot. Trying on clothes is such a nightmare, like sensory-wise. Things don't always fit. Some things are really uncomfortable. Even if they do fit, the fabric might be really stiff because it's new, especially for like jeans and stuff. And so it's just, it's really uncomfortable. Really annoying, taking clothes off, putting them back on, taking them off, putting them back on. It's just like, ugh, So I'm already kind of getting to it because I'm ranting a little, but essentially, when I think about what I dislike about going to these places, okay, there's one thing that sticks out. One thing is I'm really sensitive to a lot of sound. When it's like a chaotic, just noisy environment, that is stressful for me. stressful for my brain. I can't quite filter it all out. I'm usually really sensitive to sound. 9 times out of 10, I'm the one who recognizes the song playing in the background in the restaurant and people don't even realize there's music playing. And I'll be like, hey, look, it's, Cyndi Lauper. They're playing her song. And then they want me to pay attention to them. And I'm like, Cyndi Lauper's playing. Hold on. But yeah, so if it's really, really noisy, it's going to tire me out and it's going to stress me out. And I need to go home and just be really still and quiet after that. It's like too much, The other thing about them that really bothers me is the fluorescent lights. It's really bright. Same thing usually in malls. Really bright, fluorescent, bluish tinted lights from overhead. They give me a bit of a headache if I'm actually there for too long. I get a bit of a headache from that kind of lighting. I like more of the soft white lights, right? I'm a very big anti-overhead, what is it? I think Autistics Online have this thing against like the ceiling lights, the one ceiling light idea. Like I will never have that one ceiling light be the thing that's on unless I'm like using it on purpose for like cleaning or trying to find something. But like otherwise, lamps all the way, baby. Like I want my light sources to not come from overhead. And I want like the soft white, more yellowish looking light because the really blue fluorescent stuff really gives me a bit of a headache after a while. So this is how I had to start thinking about it in terms of like the thought of going to like a Target or a Walmart or a Costco or whatever. What is it I don't like about that, right? Thinking in terms of my senses. What do I see? What do I smell? What do I hear that is exhausting? What of that experience is so tiring for me, right? Because then it helps me to understand, oh, okay, so that's something I'm sensitive towards. So then I can do certain things to accommodate myself. For example, particularly with noisy, loud places. I might want to go out. It might be a friend's birthday or something, and I want to go out, but I know it's going to be loud. So maybe I bring a pair of earplugs, right? You can there's so many different earplugs out there nowadays. Like Loops brand has like the ones that allow the sound to come in. You have the flares that are not really earplugs. But they dampen enough background noise. They kind of dampen a little, which is kind of nice. Like there's ways to accommodate it, right? And I can bring multiple options in my pocket and just have them when I need them, right? Last time I went out, last time I used this was at like a karaoke night that I was just excited to go to. A little queer karaoke night with a group of friends. And I brought 2 pairs of different earplugs, but one of them were the ones where you can change how much sound is coming through. And it was great because I started out with them in with all the sound coming in, but still enough dampening. And then I was just able to click it back and make it quieter and quieter as the sound started to stress me out. So I got to stay there a lot longer. I would have pieced out way before I did if I didn't have those earplugs in. I might have made it like 30 minutes, but I was actually managing to be there for a couple hours, which was really, that was nice, And then also with box stores, there's other ways like, you maybe could wear your sunglasses inside if the lighting is just really getting to you. For me, if I bring earplugs and dampen just the ambient noise, that usually decreases the stress just enough that I can still tolerate the lights for a while and then just kind of get out of there. The other thing it helps me do is manage my energy level, meaning like if you've heard of spoon theory, you'll see that a lot in the neurodivergent community online. Also disability community in general online. Spoon theory is essentially, I can reference it. I think it has its own Wikipedia article at this point, but essentially it's one way to explain either physical or mental energy levels, essentially, for getting your tasks done in the day. And especially for non-apparent neurodivergence, for us, I think a lot of it is mental energy. So all of that sensory filtering, all of that time spent in environments that exhaust you, that have a lot going on, these things drain your mental energy. There's only so much energy you have to give to those tasks, right? Otherwise, you're just going to be like out of it the rest of the day, right? So one thing I know now is if I can't avoid it, if I really have to go to one of those stores, I either have to make it as short of a trip as I can, which I did already, not realizing why I did it, but I did it. And I also will do a thing if I'm able to. I will try to plan the trip to the store for when I have a lot of energy, but also for when I don't have a lot to do afterwards, right? I want to be able to give myself some time to decompress after being there. So I might go, run, do my little errands, pick up my things, and then like go and sit and chill for like 30 minutes somewhere quiet. You know, even in my car, I might just chill like in my driveway or something if the house is going to be a little rowdy when I go in, you know. I might just want to give myself a little bit of decompression time because I just went from an environment that was stressful for my brain and I used a lot of energy to do that. So if I give myself even 5 or 10 minutes to just decompress, and to not hit the microphone, ideally. But if I give myself the time to just sort of decompress from that, I might still gain enough energy to go on about my day, and it doesn't sort of derail me quite as much, you know? It's sort of like almost like when nutritionists and dietitians and stuff tell people to keep it like a food diary. You can do this in your head. You could keep it on a note app on your phone. You could like do yourself a little voice memos to remember things. Who knows? Whichever method you want to use. You could even, like, there's charts online, honestly. You could literally make a chart of, like, things I normally do, like, places I normally go, and sensory experience for that, right? Sight, sound, touch, smell. Those will probably be your main ones, you know? Might involve, too, how your body feels sometimes, maybe. But, yeah, it becomes a way for you to help accommodate stuff. So think about that for yourself. What are you the most sensitive to? What is the thing that really wears you out the most? Is it a lot of loud sound? Is it a chaotic visual environment? So visual, it could be lights, could be brightness. It could also just be the chaos of it. Are there a lot of people going a lot of different ways? Does that overwhelm you a little bit, right? Touch is a very easy one. For me, you know, some people, there are certain things they touch. Like I have a friend who like the touch of chalk, like just gives her so much ick. She's like, bleh. She doesn't want to touch it. She doesn't want to feel it. The tactile sense of chalk. She's like, yuck, right? So that's something to know about. Obviously taste, and with food, it can also be a texture thing as well. You can check in with your body in terms of how you feel in certain clothing, right? Like there might be certain fabrics or certain fits that you're just like, ugh. And you're probably avoiding those already, but maybe not, because maybe you think, well, I have to wear this for work, or maybe you do have to wear it because you have a uniform. Good to know about. Like maybe you want to put something on underneath the work shirt, you know? Maybe you want like a barrier between your skin and that. Like especially you know those like poplin cotton polo shirts that people get when they went for jobs? I hate those things. I hate how they feel on me. I hate it. Ugh. So that's the stuff that's like gives you the ick, the things that are yuck, the things are like, no way, I do not want to deal with that stuff at all. That might be the easiest thing to start noticing because you've been ignoring a lot. So you're going to probably have the easiest time, in my opinion, noticing the things that really bug you because they stick out the most, you know, when you're used to ignoring things and pushing through. But the flip side to that is also start to recognize things you really like, things that are relaxing or exciting to you, right? So for example, for me, one of the biggest things that's a great relaxing stim for me is really soft things to touch or to squeeze. So a lot of times when I film, I have little squishies. This is a little octopus, but he switches out his beep. He flips. Burp. Okay. But I can squish him and I can pet him and he doesn't make a lot of noise for the sake of the microphone. But this is one way to keep me kind of relaxed. You can see over here, I have a little bit of my sensory corner happening over here where I film. This glitter lava lamp. It's one of the most relaxing things for my brain. I love it. I love that glitter lava lamp. And I did my whole fidgets and stems video. I talk a lot about the things that I really like, things that are really helpful for my brain to relax, or things that help my brain to focus on certain tasks if tasks are really boring. But these are things that are also really important to know. Right now, it's spring where I live right now. The flowers are starting to come out. Things are smelling amazing outside. So there are certain smells I won't like, but boy, outside right now when I go to walk my dog, I absolutely stop and smell the flowers that smell good. Some of them are a little too sickly sweet smelling for me, but you know, some of them smell amazing. So it's like, yes, I will stop here and I will just take deep breaths in and just enjoy that scent to help sort of ground my body and help me relax a little bit and just like, you know. So that's also an important part of your sensory profile is thinking of the things that are fun and awesome for you, even if it seems weird to other people. Because for example, another thing I do to literally relax my brain, which is confusing to some people, is I play like Tetris Effect. So Tetris relaxes my brain. Pictopix relaxes my brain. Like certain puzzle-based repetitive things, Sudoku type things and stuff, those things are relaxing for me. Especially I can like listen to a podcast or whatever, or listen to an audiobook and do those things, and I feel super chill, zoned out, relaxed. Like that's like my favorite thing to do in the evening before bed, to like just chill out. So I need, like, if I'm literally and it could be an audiobook, it could be like a textbook audiobook, it could be like really advanced high level stuff, but it's like you combine that with like a repetitive puzzle thing, and oh my gosh, I'm in my little happy space as far as my brain is concerned. It's the best, right? For me. So that's another thing to consider with your sensory profiles. So thinking of typical, where you're at, what your environments are like, what are the things that are like kind of stressful for you or hard or exhausting, and what things are relaxing or exciting or great, and also what things are like totally neutral, right? Like I'm kind of neutral on the feeling of chalk, but my other friend is like, bleh. I don't really love the feeling of chalk, but it also doesn't really make me like want to hurl, I don't feel horrible about it. So that's one way to go with that, is thinking like, well, if you're neutral about it, then okay. Like it's a thing that can just kind of exist in the environment and it doesn't bother you one bit. And the nice thing to start knowing about the neutral things is, for example, my friend with the ick with the chalk, if we were both like working at a school and kids want us to come and draw on the sidewalk with them with the chalk, I would be able to say, yes, I can do that. But I can also offer her a little like, oh, Miss So-and-so has to go off to the bathroom, but I'll come help. I can like give her a little excuse, right? She doesn't have to touch the chalk because it gives her so much of an ick. I can do the chalk task. That's fine because it's neutral. I don't really care about it, right? So I can help other people accommodate by like, I can budge on something that's neutral. I don't mind, right? So that's another thing that's good to know about too, because I think that helps with like accommodating differing sensory needs, especially if you have like a multiply neurodivergent family all living under one roof. You likely will have sensory things that counteract each other. Very likely. Because like I said, this is all about how our brains perceive the world around us. And so it's really individualized. So, compromising those things when somebody is like super neutral about it, it makes the compromise a lot easier. So if one person has a really big yuck to something, but everybody else is neutral about that thing, then nobody really cares if the family kind of avoids that, Or if somebody really loves something and it really excites them, and then one person, it gives them the yuck, and then other people are neutral. Cool. Maybe the neutral people can kind of like corral, like the excited one can go and do that thing away from the one that it gives the yuck to, You can kind of like separate them out during their little sensory times, right? If you have overlapping like a yucky, like icky yuck or stressful or tiring thing, but you also have a really cool, fun, exciting thing that you love doing, those two things can help to balance each other in certain situations. For example, if you're someone who hates the bright lights and the sounds, but then your friends are like, let's go out dancing, and you love dancing, like maybe your body loves moving to music and the dance is like one of the best stems ever for you. It's just so awesome. But the lights and the noise don't sound appealing. Maybe the yay of the dancing, that exciting, wonderful rush of the dancing, will actually override the noise and the lights. So it's actually more tolerable, at least for a while. So then let's say you're that person who does that. You go out dancing with your friends because the dancing makes it worth it. And the lights and the noise, yeah, it's a little tiring. Maybe put in some earplugs or something, but you can do some dancing and it overrides that and you just have a great time. But then your friends are like, let's go out to this bar now where it's also noisy and maybe bright. Maybe there's flashing lights and stuff at the bar. It's everything but the dancing, basically. It's the same environment, but without the dancing. Maybe then you want to go home, right? And your friends might be like, why? Why not? It'll be fun. And maybe before your diagnosis, you're like, I don't know why not. The bar just sounds absolutely yuck to me. I definitely just want to go home now, right? But maybe when you get to understand your sensory profile, that's when you can say like, well, like it's really noisy and bright there, and I really only could do that at the dance club because of the dancing, right? Like I will do dance clubs because I love the dancing. I don't notice the lights and the noise as much. But once you take the dancing away and it's just lights and noise, it's too much for me. So like I need to go somewhere a little quieter if we're just going to be like sitting and having a drink. You know what I mean? So that's something to consider as well. And that's, I think, what a good thing about learning your sensory profile is. It helps you manage your mental energy, your physical energy, and helps you to accommodate yourself when possible, and also helps explain to other people your likes and dislikes. You can kind of describe it in a way that hopefully, if you're surrounded by really great accommodating friends, they will be willing to budge and to like kind of compromise with you on the things. And so then you hopefully experience a little less social isolation. Mileage may vary about that though, so might depend on the people. So that is the first thing. This is part of that self-awareness piece and building that self-acceptance piece of start to notice your sensory stuff. Just start to scan your body, notice how certain things make you feel. Keep track of the really big ones. And I would personally say, pro tip is to start with the really big ones. Start with the things that like are just really exciting, super fun, or really icky, because you've probably been ignoring those things or doing the exciting things a lot, but also pushing through a lot of the stuff that actually gives you a little bit of a yuck or an ick, but it's not as much of one, right? Or maybe it's unavoidable. Late diagnosed, we're used to ignoring our needs. So it's time for you to start to notice those needs, the sensory needs, through your sensory profile. I hope this video is somewhat helpful to you. If it is, please leave a comment below. I should have said this earlier, but like, subscribe, do all those things. Listen, YouTube algorithm is kind of a tough nut to crack, and all those sort of things help. If you want to do it anonymously, when you do the like and the thumbs up, I can't see who you are, just so you know. All right. At least, I don't know, maybe bigger creators can, but I sure as heck can't. I can't see who's doing the likes. So I just see that a like happened. Up next, I think we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about, I have a couple ways to go actually. Well, I'm not sure exactly which video will be next because I still have to think about it. But one thing we're going to talk about is thinking of a scale of the effort you have to put into something. So related to the sensory profile, we're going to talk about effort, whether it's mental effort, like your brain effort, or body effort, in terms of how much energy you're using. So kind of keeping track of your energy levels throughout the day. Okay. Kind of relates to that spoon theory thing. And then also we will get into executive skills, executive function stuff. So memory, attention, problem solving, reasoning, all that jazz. I might just do a video where I kind of break down the main ones people talk about the most and kind of what they are essentially, right? And then there is a way to sort of try to think of your own executive skills in terms of strengths or weaknesses for kind of figuring out your own strategies for helping with certain tasks and making them a little easier, you know? So we'll get to that a little bit here because we're still on that like self side of the Venn diagram. If I bring the Venn diagram back with my editing powers, we're still kind of on this self side. So we're going to get through this self stuff. And then we'll talk about the social stuff because that gets a little heavier, you know what I'm saying? Anywho, I hope you guys have a really great week or two or however long it'll be before you see me next. In the effort of using our weird powers for good, for the sake of connecting other people and building community rather than for bad in terms of picking on people and bullying them, I wish you all to keep it weird. And until next time, guys, bye. Good luck getting accepted by an autistic. Vampire Michael Sheen, he's in charge of that. You might think that Angel Michael Sheen can help you, but I don't think he can. I think he's way too busy with his demon boyfriend. And honestly, people feel that he's a little coded autistic as well. So I really don't think he's going to help out that much.